Welcome back to the shop. Today I'm a bit excited to try this one out. I picked up a new, well, actually I requested it from a company and I got it sent out to me. FOXBC sent me this 8-inch Dado stack set. And I'm excited about this because up until now, I've used this Admiral one from Harbor Freight. As you can see, it comes in a nice wooden box. Comes with the chipper sets, the blades, and all that. However, one thing I haven't liked, although the teeth are supposed to be flat, they appear to be alternating. So I don't know if you, let's see if you can see that there. But they have a little bit of an angle. So I'll show you that when we get into the cuts, because we'll set these all up for a 1/2 inch. But that's, so my problem is I don't think I get as flat of a dado as I should. I bought this one a while ago. Like I said, it is the Admiral. They basically have rebranded it. I see the same box. It's now Bauer. Maybe I'll take a look at that one when I go into the store and just see if it looks any different. It comes in this wooden box to hold everything. A while ago at an auction, I picked up this Amana tool one. So with this one, you can see it's got a little bit more heft to it. It's got the spacers over here in a package, and the chippers are very, they go from very thick down to a really thin one. They're not marked, so you have to kind of look up and see what they are in the paperwork. And then there is the paperwork to tell you. Same with the Harbor Freight. This one is a good set. I just think it may be a little bit too heavy for the saw that I have, a little bit too much. That's a pretty beefy chipper blade there. And for just a Delta R4560, 1.5 horsepower, 15 amp saw, I think it might just be a little bit too much for this. But we'll go ahead and run it and see how it does in comparison. The FOXBC one comes in a nice case, foam on that side, as you can see. We can pull these out, and it's got nice blades. And as you can see here, we've got it's another 24 tooth 8-inch, just like the other two. And then below that, we have our 1/8, our 1/16, and they've got basically kind of spacers on them already. And then at the bottom, we have our set of actual spacers. So I will go ahead, and what we're going to do is we're going to test each of these blades by running them with just the blades themselves, and then we'll set it up to a 1/2 inch and run the wood through as well. So let me go ahead and get the first one in the table saw, and we'll see how they run and how they sound. We're going to start off with the Admiral. So as I said, it comes in this nice wooden box. We've got, I believe it's 4 1/8 inch chippers and 1 1/16 inch chipper, as well as various spacers. The nice thing on the spacers is they are labeled. They are imprinted here. So we have 2 of them on there right now because we're basically running a 1/4 inch dado. Just the 2 blades, outside blade with 2 spacers in between. I was looking through here, and it does, so they do alternate bevels, and then it has 1 flat tooth. We'll look at the cut when we're done here and see how it goes, but I know what I think of it, so let's see if it still holds up. And then as you can see in here, it's got a cutting width chart that tells you basically your outside blades, how many 1/8 inch chipper blades and how many 16th inch chipper blades, and then how many spacer shims do you need to get to the certain widths. So that is all on here, all listed. And it goes up to, it says 13/16 of an inch. On a lot of table saws, I can tell you that once you get to a certain width, the outer washer nut for the blade won't fit any longer. That is okay. You can run it with just the nut on a dado stack, but when you go back to your regular blade, make sure you put that washer back on there. Standard 8-inch. So let's go ahead and get on our PPE and get a couple test cuts here. So what we can see here is it did a pretty decent job, but I don't know if you can see that, like especially if we go this way, you can see the outer bevels there. So it's kind of got a little bit of a curve. We'll see if it does the same thing when we go up to a full 1/2 inch. But that's been my gripe about this set all along, is I don't get a perfectly flat dado. So if I'm putting a board in there, it doesn't quite work right. On the plywood, it did a pretty decent job, but you can see there again, it does look a little bit curved. So we'll see if our other dado sets do the same thing. This one has always done it, and it's just been one of the things I haven't liked. So let me get this swapped into a bigger configuration, and we'll try it again.
A few moments later.
Because I want to include one of the smaller chipper blades, we're going to put in a 1/16 inch and another 8 inch, and we're going to go with a 9/16 total. We'll do that on all of them. We'll figure out a way to put in more chipper blades if we need to. Now, the other shims are for basically these here, are if we needed to go ahead and we do a test cut and say we're not quite wide enough, we can go 0.008 or 0.005, you know, add one of these in there somewhere, and it, just to get it just a touch wider. Okay, this is what I was talking about in here. You see, first of all, corners are still cut out, and then there's all these little grooves. So it's not cutting even. When you're trying to do dados, that's kind of the whole point. Even on our plywood, you can see it. So our chipper blades basically are cutting at different heights than everything else. Always been like this. So I'm going to go ahead and swap it out for another one, and we'll see how those do. Okay, next up is the Amana. This is a pretty expensive dado stack. I did not pay full price. I got it in an auction, so I got it at a pretty good price. But again, I mean, it's beefy. We'll see how it does. It does say 1.5 horsepower minimum saw. So I think if I was up in a 3 horsepower saw, this would be better. I've gone ahead and pulled out the shims and the chipper we're going to need for our 9/16. We're going to set those off to the side for now. This one, the shims are a little different. They're color-coded, gold, clear, white, and yellow. And then the book tells you, basically, in its chart, which you can see here is pretty extensive, but it tells you the right hand, left hand, and then a 1/16, 1/8, or 1/4 inch, and then gold which shims, and so forth. Also, what I found interesting is like the 1/4 inch. This is the 2 blades we're using now. That's a 0.257. So that's a shade, a 0.007 over a 1/4 inch. I don't know if that would matter. One of the nice things in here is it does note the, 0.312 or 5/16 of an inch, or even 0.472, 12 millimeters. So I've got both of those. Again, you're always going to use your pieces and do test fits. So let's go ahead and fire it up and see how this one does. Okay, our plywood looks pretty good. Now, looking down the side, that looks like pretty square edges. I've tried to set the tooth blade height to 5 millimeter using this for each of them. So we're trying to get consistent. Looks like this one, this one's right there at that layer, whereas this one is into that layer, but not in that layer. So this definitely looks like it gave a better cut. Now let's check out the cherry. And again, where you can see the grooves here, that looks flat. I do see a little bit of the corners there, but not as defined. So let's take it up to the 9/16 and see what that looks like. One thing of note, this one does not tell me how, the other one says blade, shim, chipper, 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 shim, blade. This one doesn't really tell me anything about that. So I'm just going to go ahead and stick the white one on. I think I'm going to stick our chipper blade on. Oh, that is beefy. Okay, on our plywood, I am seeing a little bit of a groove there. And it does look to be a little lower there than there. So And maybe I'm just getting picky. I guess leave me a comment if this is how your dados also look. Let's check the cherry out. Yep, just a touch. It doesn't seem to be as bad as the Harbor Freight, but you can see the corners there a little bit. And then, yeah, there's a little bit of a lip on where the outside ones versus that chipper blade. Now, to note, this only had one chipper blade in it. So let's go ahead and get the FOXBC loaded up, and we'll try that one. Looks pretty smooth to me. I'm trying to see in there. It looks like there may be a little bit of a ridge. And corners just barely. Let's check the cherry. Yep, again, it looks not quite as bad as the Harbor Freight, but not as good as the Amana. But it is a nice smooth bottom. So let's go ahead and up it to 9/16 and try that. Well, I'm working on getting this swap. So this is basically just like the Harbor Freight Admiral one, in that it's got 4 1/8 inch chipper blades, a 16th inch chipper blade, and then the 2 outside blades. It also has a chart, and it has some extra shims to get your dialed in width. The thicker shims, it says, are 0.60 millimeters. And those are on here, so you automatically put one of the shims, show it to you here, in between the outer blade and basically against each outer blade. So if you're using both outer blades, you use both shims. When you start using chipper blades, you go ahead and use both of them, but on the outsides, and the chipper blades go in between. Again, we have a chart here for our cutting widths. So we're going to go to 9/16, which means we need the outside blades, 2 1/8 inch chippers, and a 16th inch. So, and then how this one says in the instructions, which is pretty universal, is to go ahead and line it up with the gullet, and then go 90. Put in another chipper blade on that gullet, and 90 again. Keep rotating 90. And then we put on our outer shim and our outer blade. So always read your instructions on the dado set you're using, because what it's trying to do is prevent any of these teeth from hitting each other or chipping each other. So by setting it up this way, I've done exactly as it says, so nothing should hit. And that's the reason for those shims also. Check out our wood real quick. So our plywood one, really smooth. Wow. I feel a little bit of a groove there, and then if we look at the ends, I would say that's squared up really well. So, you know, looking at all of them, in my opinion, the Harbor Freight is the worst. On the 9/16, I almost think the FOXBC did better, but the Amana did really good, and then the Amana did the best at just a 1/4 inch. Let's check the cherry. So on this, again, just a touch of the cornering, but not nearly as bad as the Harbor Freight. Almost on par with the Amana, maybe a little better. And then it did get a little bit of grooves, but not bad. Almost like the outer ones were cutting a little higher than the inner ones, versus everything else seemed to be the opposite. The inside, the middle cut higher. Wow, that's kind of interesting. So let's go ahead and take it over there, go through the sets, and get you some more info and see what we think. Okay, let's go over price real quick since I just looked them up. And then I'll tell you about some of the things I think I said while I was over there cutting, but I'm not sure it caught all of it. I do know that one of my cameras cut off, but in any case, the lowest one, and they don't have the Admiral set anymore, but it is Bauer, it looks like the same box, the same setup. So I would bet that they basically took the Admiral name off of it, put the Bauer name on it, because Harbor Freight does seem to be branding a lot of their woodworking stuff under Bauer. So it's been a good set for me to get me started at $65. It isn't bad. It's about the cheapest you're going to find out there. Pretty readily available. There's Harbor Freights all over. You can catch it on sale. I believe right now it was like $55 or something like that. So it will be on different sales potentially. Not a bad little case. But of the three cases, it's probably third as far as the nicest. The Amana, really nice dado set. However, I do think it's a little much for the everyday budget hobbyist. I got this at auction for under 50 bucks. So it was worth it then. But looking right now, 275 bucks, maybe as far down as $225 for this set. I also think it's a bit heavy as far as running it on just a 1.5 horsepower table saw. That being said, you know, if you have a 3 horsepower saw, you want a great dado set, I would say this would be worth the investment if that's what you're doing a lot of, but I think there's better budget options for most of us. As far as the case, obviously a nice blow mode case, everything has its spot, nice shims, and so forth. So, the FOXBC. So, what I don't know if it caught it, but I'll just go over it real quick. So, shims. It does have these metal shims. It does tell you to put one on the outside of each. They do go in this case nicely at the bottom here. And then there's some thinner shims as well. I'll show you these. The one thing I'm not a fan of is that they don't have printed on them what size they are. So you're just kind of putting them in there to guess. I do have a calipers. I could measure them, but it'd just be nice if they were stamped on there like the Harbor Freight. As far as the case, I like how this has got the foam. Everything has its spot, and it goes in here really nicely. So if we load it fully up, everything fits. You know, so it all fits in the box. See that there? And then it's got a nice box. This has some heft to it. It closes well. You can see it's a little bit thicker than the Harbor Freight one, but it is also a little bit better material. It's made out, I don't know what they call this, but you know, obviously I think it's aluminum. So it does just look a little nicer. As far as cut quality, as I noted, the FOXBC did corner out a little bit, but on average, you know, on the 9/16, it was better than the other two. On the 1/4 inch, the Amana was the best, and then the FOXBC. Same with the plywood. I got, you know, a really smooth finish right here. I really like that on both of those, whereas some of these had the grooves. I did notice on these sets, these two sets, the Harbor Freight and the Amana, when I had grooves in it from using chipper blades, the outer blades were the deeper part. So the middle chippers were shallower. Oddly enough, the FOXBC was the opposite way, whereas the middle is actually deeper and the outside is a little shallower. Now, these would all work perfectly fine for putting in a board, lining it up, doing a dado. I have no question about that. I think for the money, the Fox is probably the best choice. At $80, I think that little bit more that you're spending to get out of the Harbor Freight one and into this one makes it worth a little bit. Case is a little bit nicer and so forth. So for a budget option, I think the FOXBC is an excellent choice for a budget-minded shop. All in all, I think this is a great set. It's probably the one I'll be going forward with. I think I'm going to put this one up for sale. This one I'm going to give to a friend. And the only reason is I just think this one is too much for what me and my friend have for saws. And I think this one I just will hand over. It still does the job, and I'm going to keep the FOXBC. As far as FOXBC, they did send me this. I will be fully honest. They sent it out to me to try out. I actually inquired with them about getting it because I found it. I liked it. It looked like a good thing. I would have spent my own money on it, but I asked them, hey, could I test this? And they sent it to me. Company has been around for 25 years. They do have saw blades, miter saw blades, band saw blades, all kinds of stuff. So I'm hoping in the future maybe I can get a couple of those. I'm also looking to get the spiral head for the DeWalt from them and give that a try, because that would be a seriously nice upgrade for my planer. We'll see if that comes about, or when I can purchase it, I'll go ahead and pick one up. So go ahead and hit that like and that subscribe button, and we'll see you on the next video. Thanks for watching.